Hey, what's up, everyone? This is the Daily Peanut Store, and let's get started. Today's title: I called my daughter, Barren, and demanded a grandchild. Then she cut me out of her child's life. This is a story of a father who resented her eldest daughter, wanting her to have a child so he can pamper him or her the way he wanted, while at the same time spoiling his youngest daughter. This is a story of a controlling father who lost both his daughters due to his behavior. Now, this is part of the Daily Peanut Story universe, written and narrated by yours truly, and part two of the daughter being called a Baron. Now, let's get started and enjoy the story. Entry 1. I am furious. I was furious before anyone even arrived, and I'm furious now that everyone is pretending they don't understand why. I didn't wake up that day intending to play the villain, but I also didn't wake up willing to keep swallowing years of disappointment. I am the patriarch of this family. I built it, I held it together, and when both families gathered under one roof, I saw it as my right and my responsibility to speak plainly. Legacy matters, blood matters, and I am sick of being treated like my expectations are unreasonable. The gathering itself already felt wrong. Too many smiles, too much laughter, too much pretending both sides of the family were there sitting together as if everything was normal. I watched my daughter sit beside her husband, married for years, no children, acting like she hadn't failed at one thing that actually mattered to me. Every conversation felt like an insult. When someone mentioned children casually, like it was some harmless topic, something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I called her out in front of everyone. I said she was barren. I said she was useless to this family. I said she had stolen years from her husband and denied me grandchildren. I wanted everyone to hear it because I believed the truth should finally be spoken. She just sat there, frozen, while everyone stared at me like I had done something unthinkable. Her husband tried to intervene, like he had any authority in that moment. He started talking about adoption, trying to sound reasonable, trying to calm things down. That only made me angrier. Adoption isn't blood, it isn't legacy, it isn't future I work for. I yelled that I wasn't interested in raising someone else's child just to make people feel better. I told him that if he wanted a real future, he should divorce my useless daughter and marry my other daughter instead, the one who could still give him children. I didn't hesitate because in my mind, it was practical, not cruel. My other daughter didn't even try to hide it. She stepped forward immediately, trying to speak to her sister's husband, acting like this was some opportunity instead of public humiliation. That only confirmed everything I believed. Someone had to be realistic, someone had to move forward. Meanwhile, my so called barren daughter started crying, shaking, turning herself into a spectacle. She tried to defend herself, tried to explain, like explanations change reality. When she spoke back, when she refused to accept what I was saying, I raised my hand. I was going to slap her. I won't pretend otherwise. She embarrassed me in front of both families, and in that moment, I believed she deserved to be put back in her place. I never got the chance. Out of nowhere, her husband punched me square in the face. I stumbled back, stunned, not just by the pain, but by the sheer audacity. I had been disrespected in my own home, in front of everyone. I immediately turned on his father, yelling at him to rein his son in. This was his responsibility as a parent. I said I was only telling the truth, that my daughter's failure wasn't my fault, and that his son had no right to lay hands on me. I expected another father to understand. Instead, he looked at me with disgust and called me heartless. He said I had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. That's when the room finally turned against me. Voices rose everywhere. Some family members sided with me, saying I was harsh but honest, that I had a right to be angry about not having grandchildren. Others shouted that I'd gone too far. Someone yelled that if people didn't calm down, the police would be called. Then my son in law's mother completely lost it. She screamed at me, furious, saying I was delusional for thinking her family answered to me or followed my rules. She called me out for acting like I owned everyone in that room, like my word was law over both families. Standing there, face throbbing, surrounded by people who suddenly refused to recognize my authority, I couldn't understand how this happened. I spoke the truth. I demanded what I believed I was owed, and yet, somehow, I was the one being treated like a monster, watching my family fracture in front of me while everyone else acted like I was the problem. That is the end of journal entry 1, or entry 1 for this case here. And here's my question for you. Was the husband justified in fighting back against his father in law to stop him from hurting his wife? What do you guys think? Leave it in the comment section below. Now, let's move on to entry 2. It's been a couple of days since that gathering, and I am still fuming. The anger hasn't faded even a little. If anything, it settled deeper, turned heavier, more solid. I keep replaying everything in my head: the disrespect, the shouting, the way my authority was openly challenged, and especially the punch. I was humiliated in front of both families, and no one seems to understand how unforgivable that is. Relatives have been calling and messaging constantly, telling me I will be well within my rights to pursue legal charges against my son in law. They keep reminding me that he assaulted me in front of witnesses. The more I think about it, the more it feels like something I should seriously consider. Actions have consequences, and he needs to learn that. My other daughter is furious on my behalf. She keeps saying what I already know, that this whole situation never should have happened if her sister had just done the one thing expected of her. Something so simple as giving me a grandchild, and yet my eldest daughter couldn't manage it. She had one job, one, to continue the family line. I already gave her far more freedom than most fathers would have. I let her study biology and science instead of something practical, something family focused. I tolerated years of education, years of finding herself, years of excuses, all because I believed she would eventually fulfill her responsibility. And now look where that tolerance got me. I invested time, money, and effort into her future. I even chose what I believe was the perfect husband for her at one point: someone appropriate, someone who understood tradition and duty. And she rejected that too. She turned it down outright. I almost had to drag her back home because of it. But then she introduced me to her boyfriend, the man who would become her husband. He wasn't my choice, but at least he came from a respectable family. They own decent vineyards, produce good wine, and come from a long line of Italian heritage. That mattered to me. It showed pedigree, history, something rooted. So I agreed. I accepted their relationship, even if it wasn't what I originally envisioned. But I can't help thinking about how different everything could have been if only that man from many years ago had stayed. I would have had a grandchild by now. He was just passing by, yes, but he had something rare. He wasn't even from our culture, and yet he possessed skills and knowledge that no other man I've known ever did. There was strength to him, an intelligence, a presence that commanded respect without begging for it. The last I heard, he became a powerful figure in his home country, engaged dealing directly with people who tried to steal from him. A man like that understands consequences. A man like that understands legacy. I talked about him to my family over and over again because to me he represented the perfect son in law, the standard everyone else should be measured against. I only stopped mentioning him openly when my current son in law's family was around, out of courtesy, not because my opinion changed. I was proud of that man, even from a distance. But now, after what my actual son in law did to me, that pride has turned into contempt. I want him cut off completely. He crossed a line that cannot be ignored. I've already sent my daughter a message. I demanded an apology, not just from her husband, but from her in laws as well. What happened will not be brushed aside. I made it clear that if they refuse, there will be consequences. I'm done being patient. I'm done tolerating disrespect. They can either acknowledge what was done to me or they can find out exactly what happens when they don't. That is the end of entry 2. And here's my question: did the relatives supporting the father make his entitlement and anger even worse? What do you guys think? Leave it in the comment section below. Now, let's move on to entry 3. The audacity of all of this is what's driving me insane now. Weeks have passed since that incident, and my daughter still hasn't responded to my message. Not a single word, no apology, no acknowledgement, nothing. I can feel my temper sitting right under the surface every day, just waiting for an excuse to explode again. The silence feels intentional, like a challenge, like she thinks she can just wait me out. If it weren't for my other daughter being here with me, backing me up, and reminding me that I'm not wrong, I don't know how I would have kept myself from doing something drastic by now. At least one of my daughters understands loyalty. I had wanted to marry her up soon, to secure her future properly, but I've been patient because I want the right person for her. She's picky, I'll give her that, and she takes this seriously. She wants the perfect match, someone worthy, someone who won't embarrass her or me. She's even questioned some of my past choices, pointing out inconsistencies, saying certain men didn't meet her standards I claim to have for her. She's not wrong to expect more. Her real interest, though, had always been her older sister's husband. She never hid it from me. That option is obviously off the table now, and she isn't happy about it. But I promised her I will find the perfect man for her. I always do. My side of the family has been supportive through all of this. They understand where I'm coming from. They understand that children have responsibilities to their parents and that providing grandchildren isn't some outrageous demand. It's the natural order of things. They've reassured me that I did what needed to be done, even if it was uncomfortable. Unfortunately, my daughter's in-laws don't share that understanding. Their behavior has been nothing but disappointing, especially her father-in-law. I decided to call him directly, thinking that man to man we could reason this out. At first, I tried to keep it calm. I told him plainly that it is their children's responsibility to give us grandchildren, that this isn't about feelings but about duty and family continuity. He cut me off almost immediately. He started accusing me of what I apparently did during the gathering, as if the entire situation wasn't provoked by years of failure and disrespect. He went on about control, claiming I had none over my family, which is rich coming from a man whose son punched his wife's father in the face. The conversation escalated fast. He refused to listen, kept talking over me, acting morally superior. I told him I hadn't called to be lectured, that I called to resolve things. But if he wasn't willing to listen, then I would take the appropriate next step. I told him plainly that I would take his son to court for assault. That finally shut him up for about a second. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. He told me to go ahead, said it like he didn't take me seriously at all, like I was a joke. That laughter stuck with me long after the call ended. It wasn't just disrespectful, it was dismissive. They think I won't follow through. They think I'll just back down and accept being ignored, insulted, and assaulted. They're wrong. If my daughter won't answer me, if her husband won't apologize, and if his family thinks this is all some kind of joke, then they're going to learn the hard way that I don't make empty threats. That's the end of entry 3. And here's my question. Was threatening legal action really about justice, or was it another attempt to control his family's son in law and everyone else around him? What do you guys think? Now, let's move on to entry 4. I decided to go ahead and report my son in law to the authorities. Yes, it had been a couple of weeks since the incident, but that doesn't erase what he did. Assault is assault. I went in, explained what happened, told them there were witnesses, and they said they would look into it. That was enough for me to know I was doing the right thing. I wasn't about to let them think he could punch me and walk away without consequences just because time passed and people hoped I'd calm down. After that, I sent a message to my daughter and her husband. I told them they left me no choice but to file charges for assault. I was direct. I didn't threaten. I stated a fact. They didn't respond, not a word. Instead, I received a message from their lawyer informing me that all communication would now go through him. That alone set my blood boiling. The audacity of it, acting like I'm some outsider instead of her father, like I don't deserve a response, like I need permission to speak to my own child. Not long after, we had another family gathering, this time just my side of the family. I made sure to address what happened. I voiced my dismay about my older daughter, about her behavior, about how she allowed her husband to disrespect me and then hid behind lawyers instead of facing me like an adult. I made it clear that all I did was voice my opinion, that I spoke honestly, and that none of this would have escalated if people had accepted the truth instead of reacting emotionally. A few relatives tried to suggest that maybe I should have spoken to my daughter privately instead of at the gathering. That irritated me immediately. I shut that down on the spot. I told them I had already spoken to her privately plenty of times over the years, that I had tried patience, tolerance, and understanding, and it got me nowhere. I called them out for not backing my sentiment, for suddenly acting squeamish when things became uncomfortable. After that, the room went quiet. No one argued back. They knew I was right, even if they didn't want to admit it out loud. Now, I'm seriously considering my next step. I've been thinking about walking straight into my daughter's workplace and demanding to speak to her. I am her father. She should listen to me. She doesn't get to hide behind silence, lawyers, or husband if that's what it takes to get her attention. Then so be it. And if she still refuses to fall in line after that, I'm prepared to disown her. Sometimes people only understand consequences when they're finally faced with them, and I believe that will be enough to bring my older daughter back under control. That's the end of entry 4. We're making some good progress here. Now, here's my question for you. Should the daughter have completely cut contact once her father involved the police and threatened to confront her at work? What do you guys think? Now, let's move on to entry 5. I finally decided to take matters into my own hands. I showed up at my daughter's workplace because enough was enough. I wasn't alone. I brought a couple of relatives with me because I wasn't going to be ignored again. I knew she was there. I knew her schedule. And standing in that building, watching people walk past like I didn't matter, I felt my temper rise immediately. I demanded to see her. I said she was being pathetic, hiding at work instead of facing her own father like an adult. I raised my voice because that's the only thing people seem to respond to anymore. Then this woman came out wearing a lab coat, completely unbothered by any of us. She told us calmly that we were disrupting the building and needed to leave. The way she spoke to me, like I was some nuisance, set me off. I demanded to know who she was and accused her of hiding my daughter from me. She actually laughed right in my face. Then she told me, very casually, that she didn't just own the building, she owned the entire institution. She introduced herself as Anushka. No last name, no explanation, just confidence. She told me my daughter was a valued employee and that she did not appreciate people like me showing up to cause problems. One of my relatives tried to step in and tell her to get in line, saying she was only a woman and had no right to speak to us that way. I moved closer myself, trying to assert some control over the situation. But before I could even get another word out, I was tackled. Building security came out of nowhere and took me down like I was some criminal. I was stunned, embarrassed, furious all at once. That's when it hit me that I may have miscalculated the situation. I tried to apologize, I really did. Even though I was still fuming, I realized this wasn't going the way I expected. I tried to explain that I was just a father trying to speak to his daughter. Anushka just smiled at me, not a kind smile, a knowing one. She told me calmly that her lawyers would be contacting us soon. No yelling, no threats, just certainty. Then we were escorted out of the building like we were nothing. Afterwards, still angry and humiliated, we decided to post about what happened. We talked about how my daughter refused to speak to us at her workplace, how she humiliated her own family, how she hid behind powerful people instead of facing us. I thought at least that would make people see the truth. Instead, the next thing we knew, we received a cease and desist letter from the Research Institute itself. Apparently, even speaking about the incident wasn't allowed. That only added fuel to the fire. Then, as if the day couldn't get any worse, the police got back to me about the report I filed. They told me they would not be pursuing any criminal charges against my son in law. Their reasoning? He was defending his wife from me. They even mentioned that they didn't want to pursue charges against me either. But the implication was clear. I was painted as the aggressor. The audacity of it all left me shaking with rage. But just as I was sitting there stewing in everything that had gone wrong, something unexpected came up. An opportunity presented itself. Not for my eldest daughter, but for my younger one. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe things were finally starting to turn in my favor. That is the end of entry 5. And here's my question for you. Was Anushka right to have security remove the father and his relatives from the research institute? What do you guys think? She owns the building itself. She owns the institution itself. Does she have the right to get involved in family matters involving one of her valued employees? What do you guys think? Leave it in the comment section below. Now, let's move on to entry 6. I finally got my chance to speak to my useless daughter face to face, and I did not hold back. They sent me a message requesting a meeting at my son in law's family vineyard, of all places. I already didn't like the setup, but I went anyway because I was done being ignored. When I arrived, I saw that this wasn't just between me and my daughter like it should have been. Her husband's parents were there, and to my irritation, that woman Anushka was there too. They claimed they wanted a proper conversation with all parties involved. But I made it clear immediately that this was between me and my daughter. I didn't invite an audience. My son in law stepped in before I could shut it down. He said, my daughter is his wife, and that means this involves his family, whether I like it or not. I had to bite my tongue when they started listing what I apparently did at the family gathering. They said instead of speaking privately, I shamed my daughter for not having children and then tried to hit her in front of everyone. And that this showed how delusional I am for thinking I control everything. I listened, barely, because in my mind, they were twisting the situation to make me look like the problem. Then my daughter spoke. She looked straight at me and said she was angry at me, that she had endured years of torment from me and had finally had enough. She said, either I respect their decision to not have children yet, or they would all move on without me. Then she used my own words against me. She said if losing me is what it takes to finally have peace, then so be it. Hearing that from my own daughter felt like a slap in the face, but I refused to let her think she'd won. When it was my turn, I called her out for what she really is: disobedient. I told her she refused to follow my rules, refused to accept the future I planned for her, and chose someone outside my choices. I told her I was deeply disappointed in how she turned out after everything I gave her. I reminded her that I gave her plenty of freedom, allowed her to study whatever she wanted, tolerated years of nonsense. Then I pulled my ace. I told her her mother will be very disappointed in what she's become. I saw her face change immediately, like she was about to cry, and for a moment I knew that line landed exactly where I wanted it to. That's when I demanded my money back, all of it. I pulled out financial documents showing everything I had spent on her over the years and told her I wanted it repaid in full, with interest, or I will take her to court. That's when Anushka laughed out loud. I told her to stay out of it. But she apologized, and for a brief second I thought she was apologizing to me. Instead, she said she was apologizing to my daughter. My face went red with anger at the sheer disrespect. She said, a father who keeps records of how much money he spent raising his own child and then demands it back is delusional, and that raising a child is a parent's responsibility, not a loan to be collected later. I told her this was a family matter and she had no right to involve herself. She just smiled and said she'd said what she needed to say and sat back down. That's when my daughter spoke again and dropped something I did not expect. She said, I didn't pay for her schooling at all. Her mother did. She said the money I was claiming came from her mother, safeguarded by a trust, and that she only recently found out because the family lawyer contacted her about the trust status. My face went pale. I told her that money rightfully belonged to me and that she had no say in it. But she just looked at me with disappointment and reminded me where I came from. Her mother had the money, not me. She told me they were cutting ties with me because of the constant harassment she endured for years. She said she wanted a father who cared about her, not someone who shows up with a spreadsheet demanding repayment for raising his own child. Then she asked me if I had the same spreadsheet for her sister. I couldn't answer. She told me it wasn't her business anyway. I tried to turn to my in laws to speak, but they stopped me. They told me they support their son and their daughter in law completely, and that they'd known about my comments and the way I badmouthed them for years through other family members. Then her mother in law asked me what business I actually own and what assets I have. I couldn't answer. She told me bluntly that all I have is a job and a paid off house, and that I don't control their family. She said their son is the next patriarch of their family and is well respected. Then I was asked to leave. I felt humiliated, exposed, in front of people who saw right through me. As I walked away, I thought I saw my wife's sad face standing beside my daughter, looking at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. I left defeated. Days later, everything fell apart even more. My younger daughter called me crying. The man she wanted, the man she chose, and the man I chose for her shut her down publicly, calling her out for trying to get in the way of his relationship. Sitting there listening to her cry, it felt like everything I worked Four was collapsing at once. My authority, my family, my legacy, everything seems to be falling apart. That's the end of entry 6. And here's my question: what did the father's demand for repayment reveal about what he truly is regarding his relationship with both his daughters? Leave it in the comment section below. Now, now let's move on to entry 7. I decided to go through with it and try to make my daughter to court to get my money back. I was convinced that once it reached a judge, someone will finally see reason. Instead, I was literally laughed off, not just dismissed, laughed at. Before it could even get close to a courtroom, the entire thing collapsed. Even my own lawyer practically dropped me. He told me outright that he would not represent a father who demands repayment for the money he spent raising his children. He said I had a moral obligation as a parent and that what I was trying to do crossed a line. Hearing that from someone I hired felt like another betrayal piled on top of everything else. Word spread fast after that. The rest of the family found out what I tried to do, and at the next family gathering, the atmosphere was completely different. People didn't want to listen anymore. They didn't want explanations. Several of them openly called me out. Even those who originally supported me started backing away, saying they would never ask their own children for financial compensation for raising them. I tried to argue. I tried to remind them who I was. I tried to command the room like I used to. It didn't work. I was ignored. Conversations continued without me. People walked away mid sentence like I wasn't even there. As for my younger daughter, things have gotten worse. She's been binge eating constantly. She was already on the heavier side, and now she's gained even more weight. I tried to talk to her about it, told her she needed to pull herself together, that she was letting herself go. That was a mistake. She snapped. She screamed at me, called me useless, accused me of ruining everything. She had chips in her mouth while she was yelling, and pieces flew everywhere. Crumbs and bits landing on my face while she stood there shaking with rage. I'd never seen her like that before, and for the first time, I didn't know how to shut it down. Desperate, I tried reaching out to the man from years ago, the one I always believed would have been the perfect solution. I thought maybe he could help. Maybe he could meet my daughter. Maybe he could bring some order back into this mess. I sent a message asking for help. Instead of a response from him, I received a formal letter from his lawyer. His name was Steve. The letter stated clearly that my message was inappropriate, that the man was already engaged, and that all future communication will go through his lawyer. Reading that felt like the final door slamming shut. At this point, I don't even recognize my family anymore. No one listens, no one obeys. Every attempt to reassert control only makes things worse. Even the people I once believed would always side with me are gone. Everything I thought I had, authority, respect, legacy, is slipping away, and no matter how hard I push, I can't seem to stop it. That's the end of entry 7. And here's my question: do you think the father finally understood that every attempt to regain control was only destroying his family further? If it's not already destroyed already? What do you guys think? Now, let's move on to final entry. It's been months since everything collapsed, and the fallout was far worse than I ever expected. Whatever authority I thought I had is gone. People don't call anymore. Family gatherings stopped, including me. Even my own home feels quieter, emptier, like something essential drained out of it and never came back. I kept telling myself this was temporary, that once emotions cooled, things would return to how they were supposed to be. Then I found out the truth through social media. My daughter is pregnant. I felt something inside me snap: joy, relief, vindication all at once. I was ecstatic. Finally, I was going to be a grandfather. I told myself this proved I was right all along, that everything I pushed for had finally happened. I immediately sent her a message congratulating her, telling her how happy I was. There was no response. Still, I convinced myself she was overwhelmed, that this was her way of processing everything. I thought she had finally listened. I went to her workplace. Security nearly removed me again, but this time my daughter stopped them. For a moment, I thought this was it, the turning point. I told her I wanted to talk. I even brought the blanket her grandmother made years ago, the one meant for her first child. She took it from me without expression and agreed to talk in a meeting room. Security stayed nearby. That should have been my warning. I started talking about the baby right away: names, whether it was a boy or girl, what kind of future they would have. She stopped me mid sentence. She looked serious, distant, nothing like the daughter I remembered. She told me plainly that they had already cut ties with me and that I would not be allowed in her child's life. I felt the air leave my chest. I asked her why. I told her she was finally pregnant, that this was what I wanted, that I didn't understand why she was doing this now. That's when she made it clear. This pregnancy wasn't planned. It just happened. She did not get pregnant to appease me. She and her husband decided to keep the child for themselves, not for me, and I would not be involved because of everything I had done to her over the years. I tried to apologize. I really did. She cut me off and asked me a question I wasn't ready for. Was I apologizing because she was having a child or because I actually meant it? I hesitated. I couldn't answer fast enough. She nodded like she finally had the confirmation she needed. She told me to leave. Anger rushed up so fast I could barely contain it. I started to mention grandparents' rights, tried to assert that I still had a place, but she shut that down immediately. She reminded me of my need for control throughout her entire life, of everything I had done, and told me that now I had no control at all. Security stepped in and escorted me out. As I was being led away, I looked up and saw Anushka standing on a second floor balcony, looking down at me with a serious expression. She didn't say anything. She just turned and walked away. Not long after, I received a legal document. It made everything painfully clear. My daughter is cutting me off completely. Any attempt to contact her will result in a prohibition of approaching, the equivalent of a restraining order, along with further criminal charges. There was no room for negotiation, no room for interpretation. It was final. Now I sit at home, defeated. My younger daughter has lost her figure and grown even larger. She barely leaves the house. My money isn't enough to support us both long term, and the future looks thinner every day. I don't know what to do anymore. I pushed, I demanded, I tried to control everything, and in the end, I lost it all. I screwed up so badly. That's the end of final entry, and here's my final question for you. Did the father genuinely regret hurting his daughter? Or did he only regret it because he's losing his grandchild? What do you guys think? Now, let's move on to Epilogue. Anushka worked late into the night, the lights of the newly acquired research facility still burning long after most of the staff had gone home. The institute sat quietly in the Italian countryside, its walls housing work that could redefine next generation medical treatment. The acquisition had cost her a considerable sum, one that would have made most investors hesitate, but she had never doubted its value. The early results were already promising. One of her top research scientists, a biologist with an uncommon instinct for discovery, had begun producing breakthroughs that validated her decision. Watching progress unfold in real time was one of the few things that still brought her genuine satisfaction. There was, however, one constant complication she could not streamline or acquire her way out: the scientist's father. He was difficult, demanding, and relentlessly opinionated, a presence that tested her patience more than any boardroom negotiation ever had. In many ways, he reminded her of her own father back home. She still returned there from time to time, despite her schedule, and when she did, she noticed the change in him. He no longer pushed her the way he once had. He understood now that the life she lived was built entirely by her own hands. Still, he could not help himself entirely. He hinted that she should marry soon, casually mentioning that many suitors had approached him on her behalf. Each time he reminded her that the decision was hers alone. She reminded him gently but firmly of a promise he had made long ago to an old friend who had since passed away. A promise she had never forgotten. The man she was promised to might one day appear, she said, and until then she would wait. Anushka knew exactly who that man was. She had known for years. She had even helped him from the shadows not long ago, ensuring certain doors remained open and certain threats quietly disappeared. She loved him deeply, though he did not even know she existed. That was the cruel irony of it. In her possession was his grandfather's journal, a fragile thing filled with words written in a language long dead, a language few even recognized anymore. She had read it herself, studied it carefully, and understood enough to know its importance, but not enough to unlock everything it contained. She was certain he would be able to decipher it. He had to. His life depended on understanding the truth his grandfather left behind. As Anushka closed the journal and looked out over the quiet facility grounds, she knew her role was not to interfere or to force fate's hand. She would wait. When the time came, the journal would finally find its way to him, and the promise made long ago would finally be tested. That is the end of the epilogue and the second part of the story. What do you guys think? Leave it in the comment section below. I would like to hear your thoughts. This is actually the original draft, actually. I'll be honest. I just changed the updates to entries. Yes. Didn't change much. I just want to keep it as whole. One of the few stories that has not been stolen. Yes, I checked, triple checked, quadruple checked. Yeah, we got one more story regarding this series here. And this time it will be the younger sister story coming next. And I'm working in sequence here to follow through with the Jack and Andrew fight. And I know some of you guys have different opinions about the fight as well. And I do understand where you guys are coming from. This is my baby. Hence why I also created the alternate timeline as well, to give the other followers their, what do you call that now? Their own choices, the alternate endings to their stories. But it will be completely different again, which is, I call it the alternate Sophia timeline, as most of you guys are already aware. Now, moving on, the disclaimer here. This is written and narrated by yours truly here for the Daily Peanut universe, part of the Daily Peanut story. Like, yeah, Daily Peanut story universe, combination of them. Or let's call it a DPU. You know what? Let's make it very official, the DPU, just like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, if you guys got any questions or requests, leave it in the comment section below. I'll check it out. And that is all the time that I got, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Remember, have fun, relax, and enjoy. And before, I am also in the other platforms as well. Even on Spotify, where I don't actually give commentaries, it's just straight through storytelling here. using not using my voice. Okay, there you go. Have a good day, good night, afternoon, wherever you are. This is the Daily Peanut Story signing out, and I will see you guys in the next story.